Hey everyone, this is Jono from Veracity with another video in my video series. This one continuing the xAPI 101 theme from the last few videos, and we're continuing some basics about xAPI statements. This is really part 2 of that. So this was the agenda from last time. JSON example. We actually covered that the last time, so I'll put links in the description to the 2 terminology videos that we did, and then the one that covered part 1 of this agenda on what JavaScript object notation is, JSON, and how it relates. And today we're going to get into some of these things. I think we're probably going to only make it through actor and verb, because I want to go slowish, and I don't want these to be too long. So yeah, let's dig right in. So the actor in the statement. So you've probably heard actor, verb, object. I did this. Jono completed the History 101 course, for example. And in that example, Jono is the actor in the statement. So this is an example of what an actor really looks like. Of course, it just doesn't say, Jono or John here. It is a complex, somewhat complex JSON object. Again, check out the last video if that doesn't make sense to you. We have our property, actor, and its value is this object. In this case, we have an inbox, which is really an email. It has to start with, let me grab my highlighter. There we go. It has to start with this mail to colon, and then we have the email address. This is optional, but we have a name for the person. So if we're doing reports or whatever on the data, we can show their name. And the object type is agent. It is pretty common. It is often used in more informal use cases, identifying folks with an email, but really it's possible anywhere. Let's take a look at another example. This one is similar. Let me grab my highlighter. Great. Where we have the actor property. It is equal to some object. You can see it's identified by the beginning and end of these guys right here. So again, we have a name, still John Doe. This time, instead of the inbox, we have this account property, and you can see it has its own sub-object, has 2 properties, name and homepage. And what we have here is just example data. Let's start with homepage. This is some identity system. It could be your LMS URL. It's really just a string of information that you use to kind of set the scope of the accounts. And then here we've got some ID. It's under the name attribute, but we've got some kind of identifier. Here it's all numbers. Could be really anything, but this is uniquely identifying the user within the scope of what is identified by this system. So think about it this way. Maybe you are using your learning management system IDs to identify your users. So you might want to put the homepage of your learning management system and then the IDs for your users in this section. If you're using some external system for single sign-on, Okta.com, you might have Okta.com here, and then the kind of Okta IDs of your users here. So there's a little bit of flexibility on how these are used, but what's important to realize, it is the combination of these 2 things that uniquely identify your user. So if you have a bunch of data, and it has this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but in one case, you have myidentitysystem.com, and then you have in other statements where it's, Okta.com, but the same name. When you have the different home pages, that signifies different people, because again, it's the combination of these 2 things. So anyway, that's, I think a decent primer on an actor. We'll show you some of this stuff going forward. I'll even show you a little bit today, but we'll show you some additional stuff going forward on how this fits into statements later. Okay, let's go on to verbs. Few thoughts on verbs. We often get questions about, what's the right verb in this circumstance? And often there isn't a quote-unquote right verb. However, this is a good example of that. You'll see these things sometimes used interchangeably. Like, what's the difference between initialized and started? Well, I don't know exactly. So there are xAPI profiles, again, we'll talk about those later, that define the verbs that are used for specific use cases like e-learning. And I think the best guidance is to not reinvent the wheel. Use what is already in a profile, use is what is commonly used, and don't create your own verbs for things that already exist. And that may take a little bit of research or asking around, but it'll be well worth it in the end. Okay, let's actually look at an example. All right, pretty simple. So we have, just like in the actor, we've got our property. Here it's called verb. It's equal to some sub-object, and it has an ID and a display. The display has EN/US, so English, US English, lowercase initialized. We could have several others here. This is, it's a map. It's called a map, language map. So we could have several languages for this. The important thing to realize is the verb is identified by this ID or IRI right here. This is the important thing. When you are querying a system and you say, oh, I want to see everything that's initialized, you don't write a query based on the word initialized. You write it based on this IRI string. I know it looks like a URL. I know it looks like a web page. It's really just an ID for the initialized verb, and it's the important thing. In fact, let me roll back a couple slides to actor real quick. All right. Here. I kind of mentioned this, that the combination of these two things are important. If you wanted to query everything about John Doe in a system, you wouldn't ask for all data about the string John space Doe. You would ask for all data where the home page is myidenitysystem.com and the name is 01234567889. These things here are how you identify the user, not with this. That's a best practice. There are some exceptions to that rule, but in general, that's the way it should work. And in fact, why don't I go back one more slide? In this case, the thing that identifies the user, again, is not the name. It's this mail-to string. This is the identity of the user. So again, you want to query based on show me all data for mail2:john.doe@company.com, not show me all data for John space Doe. In general, that's a good best practice. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at what this looks like in context. Here we go. I've got an LRS open, real LRS, some sample data in it. This is just kind of made up stuff. I've got a John Doe user. I'm just going to open up one of these. So this is the full xAPI statement. You'll see some of these things are kind of closed up, but not a big deal. And some of these things are kind of added by the LRS as well. We'll talk about them someday down the road. But anyway, you can see here, let me make it a little bit bigger. This is very similar to the things that we just talked about. Here's our actor. You see in this case, it's an inbox, like we showed that's a way to do this. We've got a verb. The verb has an ID. This is the thing that we would query on. In this case, it's completed. And then we've got an US English display for that verb. And then there's more stuff, and we'll get to this other stuff later in future sessions. But you can see what we just went over is really the beginning of an xAPI statement. What is the user and what are they doing? In this case, John Doe is completing something. What are they completing? Tune in for a future video and we will actually talk about that. All right, so that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap this today. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, click the thumbs up. Thanks for watching and have a good one.